Nana, I'd like to start straight away with you first. And you have already raised some issue. You say that Pastor Otabil calls for new leadership response to our crisis. Government says the comment is unfortunate. Bishop Duncan Williams calls on Satan to take his hands off the president and, the finance minister. Government didn't comment. Your question is, which is more frightening? An advice that's I seek a new approach, or we seek new approaches and thinking out of the troubles, or one that tells us that we need deliverance from the devil to get out of the troubles. You have heard, and I deliberately did that, you've heard Dr. Mensah Otabil, what he had to say about the sinking ship and a new leadership response. There appears to be a misinterpretation elsewhere saying that he's saying there's the need for new leaders. That's not what he's asking for. It's a new leadership response. Then you heard Doug Hayward-Mills also speak about, his concerns about the way things appear to be managed and the questions of corruption. And then you heard Duncan Williams also play back what he had to say earlier on. And then finally you heard President Jerry Rawlings when he was being decorated with an honorary doctorate at the University of Cape Coast. And he spoke about unprecedented levels of corruption, show of power and opulence in a time where we need to show frugality. What are we talking about that we don't see the president lead his team to seek to do? What's the problem?
Well, thank you, Samson, and let me wish your viewers and my colleagues a good Saturday, especially my little boss, James Agaga, whom I haven't seen in a while. Now,
he's either your boss or he's not. He can't be a little and a boss and being little at the same time. Move on to the substantive matter. Let's go.
Now, Samson, the three narratives that you have played, J.J. Rawlings.
That makes it four.
Four. Okay, so J.J. Rawlings, Duncan Williams, Doug Hayward-Mills, and Pastor Mensah Otabil.
Right.
They are all saying the same thing with different emphasis. Otabil is saying that let's look for new thinking because the problems persist, and they've been persisting for a long time with untold consequences for the living standards of our people, and that we have to look for new ways. That's what Otabil is saying. J.J. Rawlings puts it even much more dramatic. So the levels of corruption is unprecedented. That's what J.J. Rawlings is saying, and that we all need to come together with the government to control corruption.
Mr. Rawlings talks also about show of power and opulence, but doesn't end there. Talks about untouchables who are seeking to institutionalize corruption.
Yeah. So he said all of that. Duncan Williams, from what you've played, is also talking about a certain spiritual dimension. I heard him once praying for Satan to take his hands off the president and so on. And then the other religious leader. Basically, what all of this, the connection, as far as I can see, is that there is a need for new thinking by leadership. The emphasis varies from person to person, but nobody is satisfied with the current performance of leadership in this country today, and they are calling for a change. Essentially, that's what they are doing.
Change of what? Leadership?
Change in thinking, change in approach. If you listen to Otabil, he's calling for new thinking. You listen to Rawlings, he's saying that there's so many things that are going wrong and they have to be tackled. And you need leadership to do all of this. He's saying that all of us should come together, but you need leadership to bring everybody together. All the others are saying the same thing. Essentially, there is a need for a certain thinking, new thinking, if we are to get away.
A supplementary budget was read recently. Is it the case that these leaders are simply ignoring the concrete steps that we have been told have been put in place, or that they don't have the patience for that?
Something. Supplementary budgets have been read for over a long period. Last year, a supplementary budget was read. 2 years ago, a supplementary budget was read. But our problems keep getting worse. And you cannot deny that the problems keep getting worse. I'm sure if you were to open your phone lines for Ghanaians to call in, you would find out that the conditions are getting worse. And you have institutions like the TUC, the religious leaders, everybody talking about it. So it's getting worse. And so if it's getting worse, then you're not going to keep doing the same things over and over again.
I return to you for an in-depth analysis of this issue. Now, James, Otabil's comments, President Rawlings' comments, clear indictment of the current leadership.
Well, Samson, good morning to your viewers. Well, Rawlings may have spoken. I've heard Otabil, I've heard Dr. Mills speak. But it is important to state that Duncan Williams' speech, I think, was to the effect that Ghana needed prayers to come out of the doldrums. Many people criticized him when he made those statements because they thought that it was not a religious matter.
He literally held the CD up and prayed and sought to exorcise whichever demonic spirit was inside the CD.
Well, you cannot take that away from Duncan Williams. He's a man of God, and at every moment, prayers, of course, are part and parcel of our daily lives. And so if he thought that there were issues which could be resolved by, of course, exalting God, why not? But let me turn to the comments made by Dr. Mensah Otabil, and he is an intellectual for that matter. Mensah Otabil paints a very gloomy picture about the prevailing economic conditions, in the country. It is as if nothing is being done. He questions the leadership style of the government. He's calling for new leadership. And I think that
new leadership response, those are his words. His words are not new leadership.
Well, a new leadership response, one would want to ask the question whether Dr. Mensah Otabil is oblivious to some of the, of course, initiatives which have been put in place to arrest the decline in economic growth in this country. Obviously, one cannot say that he's oblivious of some of those developments. I'm sure he definitely was alluding to the decline in the performance of the CD over the period.
Right.
And given the fact that he is an intellectual, not
he
just a man of God.
He spoke about the unimaginable, said he doesn't expect it, he doesn't think we will get there, but what he has seen over the years in this country is that things only get worse, they don't get better. So the CD, like somebody, an earlier speaker had said, could get to 10 cedis to $1.
Well, Samson, I think that comment is most unfortunate. The reason being that, you see, if you sound so pessimistic about the performance of your economy, you don't inspire hope. You are sending a wrong signal to investors. And which is the reason why this government has gone to the IMF to inspire confidence in the economy and to tell people that, listen, these things are temporary, we can overcome them. But if you have a man of God...
The investors do more than listen to, a preacher, an inspirational speaker.
No. Confidence building is critical here. Because when you come out and declare that you have no doubts, that given the current trends, and of course the decline in CD, etc., you think that the CD can, of course, decline up to the point where $1 would be equal to 10 CDs. It's a very serious statement to make. And
okay,
that statement can scare away investors from the country. One would expect that Dr. Mensah Otabil, who is also an intellectual, would realize that such statements, which expresses nothing but pessimism, do not augur well for economic growth, and one would want to question his motives for doing that.
I see. Just hold on. I will come. We'll deal with it thoroughly and look at the statement more closely. But, Godwin, isn't it sad when James seems to suggest that investors will choose to listen to Otabil than listen to the president or the finance minister?
We need to look at the context in which Dr. Otabil made a comment, and then also to look at the audience that he was addressing. I suppose this was a festival
of ideas, a gathering of especially youthful, Ghanaians, teaching them skills to, make business.
So he was more or less generally giving them ideas he thought would enable them succeed in whatever endeavors that they may find themselves in. And so the issue of the city, I mean, if you listen to him, was just an example that he had to use.
Somebody has spoken about it earlier.
And
he said, well, that's the person's, fear.
Very good.
Even though he doesn't expect it.
So he uses it as an example to make a point.
Right.
Then he also uses the Titanic.
Right.
Also as an example to make a point. And if you took all these things in their proper context, with an open mind, you come to the conclusion that he was more or less saying, you may be hopeful, but you also have to expect the worst. And if you look at it from
actually said that.
Yes, you can be hopeful, but don't let that hope make you complacent. You should expect the worst, because someone has said that looking at the trend of the fall of the city, it is possible that it could reach this particular stage. So whoever is in charge can have that in mind while he goes about handling the situation. That is how I understood it. Now, looking at it from that perspective, I wouldn't see it as a negative comment. Because even in strategic planning, you have to take note of your strengths, your weaknesses, and even your fears. And the fears will normally be grounded upon things that can happen that you may not wish to happen, so that you are able to plan and be ready for them. So I think that we should interpret...
But you say on that point, and looking at it with an open mind, you can say that there's nothing wrong about it.
Yes, I don't see...
But there's a point where he speaks, he does the comparison of the various ships, and then comes to the Titanic and uses that to say that appears to be the kind of leadership that we have, and we need a new leadership response because nothing seems to be working.
And very good. I think that there could be, or there is a factual basis for that comment, because government has always inspired us to be hopeful. I mean, there are statements from senior government officials telling us repeatedly that the situation is just a temporary situation and that the economy will get... These are hopes that they are trying to get into us.
Right.
And that is a fact. But he's saying that while we are hopeful, we should also not lose sight of the fact that it could get worse. And don't forget, people are looking at the immediate, or what you may call the short term, the medium term, and then the long term. It is true that government has implemented and is implementing some initiatives,
including having gone to the IMF.
Very good.
And hoping that that will also bring us some, benefits.
Very well. But some people ask, how about our immediate needs? How about the short to medium term situations? These measures may well produce positive outcomes, but how soon will those outcomes be felt?
Okay.
And I think that, these are issues that we can tolerate as a legitimate comments to be made about the situation.
I'll return to you, like I said, we'll get into the details. Now, Kweku, those who continue to make comments sort of in disregard of the president's call that we should not be pessimistic, but we should be optimistic, don't they have a genuine cause? When, for example, we are being told that measures have been put in place to turn the situation around, and we are clearly aware of some of the measures that have just not worked. The Bank of Ghana's regulations, they have just not worked.
Yes. I'm actually surprised that there are people in this country who are worried about what some of our religious leaders are saying. For a moment, let's
let's put the former president's intervention aside. I'm not going to box it.
Okay, sorry, but I understand we have a little difficulty. We'll take a quick break. We'll return and hear Kukubako, and then we'll continue with this discussion. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. Welcome back to your most authoritative news analysis show, Newsfile. And Abdul Malik Kukubako Jr., you were saying that you are shocked, you are surprised that people have issues with the comments of Dr. Otabil.
Yes, my point really is this. We have a tradition, a history of religious leaders who have shown some proactive commitment, to the need to deepen democracy, to defend human rights, to widen the space for economic prosperity. We have a history. If you go back and check resolutions and communiques and things passed by the Catholic Bishops' Conference, the Christian Council of Ghana, and many other religious leaders throughout our history, and put together, it helped us to move forward as a nation. Of course, we've also had a fair share of a history where some religious leaders and evangelical people of dubious character had intervened and had been used, especially by state agencies or governments, to try and, as it were, as Karl Marx put it, make a religion an opium of the masses. So there's a mixed bag out there, but you must always be discerning and look at the positive aspects of what is being preached.
Than the dollar, it was $1 was equivalent to 0.91 Ghana cedis. Then by December 2008, please, Nana,
92 pesos.
Nana,
92 pesos.
Nana.
Just to be.
I said 0.91.
You can't have 0.91.
You think it's 92 pesos?
No, you can't have 0.91.
Nana, oh, you've made your point, so please
allow him to go.
Nana,
no, he doesn't have to accept it.
Nana,
you make your point.
Nana.
There are people who are listening. They can judge between.
So it's 92 pesos.
What's the difference?
No, 0.91, it doesn't happen.
In percentage terms.
James, you are talking about economic fundamentals that have not changed.
Yes.
And that are the cause of what we are in now.
Yes.
But these fundamentals have been there when we have celebrated single-digit inflation, and when we have touted how much we have been able to, through our expertise, hold the economy.
Samson, I was trying to demonstrate a very important point, that you see a lot of the talk has centered on the decline in the cedi. And I'm saying that even as far back as 2007, when we did the redenomination exercise, you find that the cedi started declining steadily. I mean, from 2007, the cedi was actually had more value than the dollar. Then by December 2008 alone, the cedi had declined to from $1 to 1.10 Ghana cedis.
You mean 1.10?
1.10, 1 cedi, 10 pesos. That was the value of the cedi. And the decline continued. By June 2009, we had $1. I mean, the equivalent of $1 was now 1 cedi, 40 pesos. Then by December 2011, the $1 was equivalent to 1.64. And it goes on and on and on. So the point I'm simply trying to make is that you see the economic fundamentals haven't changed, even after redenomination.
You have said
the real value of the cedi.
Government has said this over and again. The questions that are coming up is the manner of the response.
Yes.
And the agency, Nana Kumia, says he doesn't see.
What else can a government do? The government has clearly stated that, look, we have gone to the IMF to seek support in order to inspire confidence in the economy. So that this economy, of course, when you have people making pessimistic statements, they paint a very gloomy picture about the economy, something needs to be done to inspire a certain level of confidence. And that is why we are at the IMF. But Sami, to argue that nothing is being done and that our ship is sinking, when we know that, I mean, in the last decade, for instance, the rate of maternal mortality clearly has seen an improvement from 700 maternal deaths to 300 maternal deaths per every 100,000 definitely it's not evidence that our ship is sinking. It's not true. If you consider the fact that we have done a lot of investments in infrastructure, we had the Dumso, phenomenon. Today, you can have lights at least continuously for a long period without experiencing Dumso. A lot of investment has gone into that sector.
Okay.
A turbo is coming on board, and it is projected that when we start producing our own gas, we're going to save over $500 million annually on the importation of gas to fire our thermal plants.
All right.
So is that not evidence of planning and action to, check the decline in the economy?
Thank you very much. You've been speaking for about 8 minutes now, so just hold on briefly now at this point. This show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of MTN Everywhere You Go. Welcome to the new world. It's also brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. Also by Arata Motors. That is where you will get the best vehicles, slightly used and brand new for the best prices. Thank you. Let me listen to Otabil one last time. Let's hear Dr. Otabil again.
It's obvious that the times we are in require leadership that responds to crisis with clarity and with purpose. We need a new leadership response in our national life. We cannot continue partying, and we cannot assume that things will get better. We have to act intentionally, decisively, methodically. And if we do, at the national level, I think we can avert the disaster. I think one of the speakers was talking about a scenario of the city getting to 10 cities to the dollar. And I had people exclaim when that thought even came up. And much as I'm a pastor and I believe in God and I believe in the power of prayer and I believe that we can pray and things will turn around, the city has a very peculiar mind on its own. Much as I wish that the city would remain where it is or improve in value, that scenario of 10 to 1 is a possibility. I don't wish it, I don't want it, I don't pray for it, I don't hope for it, I don't expect it, but it can. And so instead of sitting here hoping that everything will be all right, I think it would be great for us to face reality that things could get worse. We are in this ocean and our ship is going down, and we can't pretend it's a party on board our ship. And I hope the captains of the ship don't behave like the captain of the first Titanic, who was so overconfident that he allowed thousands of people to die just because he wasn't prepared for the crisis.
You're here on Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM in Accra, on Love FM in Kumasi, and over a dozen affiliate stations across the country. On the internet, you're listening to us on myjoyonline.com. If you're watching us at my multi-TV world /streams. And I come to Abdul Malik Kubako, and I need to, bring the background and context again. That he was speaking to up-and-coming leaders about leadership and about business, how to really do it well. And they were speaking about best and worst scenario cases. And there had been one or two people who had spoken up before him, and he came and sought to use this example to make the point. Kweku, what should be government's attitude to what Dr. Mensah Otabil had to say, and what Jerry Rawlings had to say?
Well, I put Rawlings in a separate category. I would, if I have to deal with it, I'll deal with it in a very distinctive manner.
You have time to deal with the two of them separately.
I'm looking at the religious leaders, or in this case, the focus being on Dr. Otabil. I think, you see, leadership here, I'm not sure it's just exclusively the political. You're talking of business-centered forum, the economic management, managers of this country, social opinion leaders. Ghana is a collective. It's driven not just by politics, even though that is the primary one. But we have leadership cutting across, and he's challenging that leadership, including the political. With the emphasis there, I would put it there. But I'm not sure he was focusing just exclusively on that. To start leading with purpose and clarity. Positive advice for anybody, at any time. You ought to accommodate it, thoroughly take it on board, and let it inspire you. That's what you do. You don't show any negative reaction to that, because you see, that itself is a weakness. If you respond to the Otabil thing in a very negative, wild-cut manner, it's a reflection of a certain weakness on your part. So I would rather encourage and entreat government and all the other leaders in the economic, social, and religious fields to actually see this as an inspirational, catalytic, call for all of us to move forward. That's the way I see it. It's asking for decisiveness. Isn't it true? This is so commonplace, okay, that I wonder why it's become an issue. And that I say it's become an issue because people have decided to tag Otabil with some political colors. And so that then you don't hear him, you don't listen to him. And that is not positive for this country. So to be honest, I would have thought that within 5 minutes we would have settled this matter and accepted as somebody who is so concerned about this country.
Okay. Gugu, this is what you do. Sorry, but we still have a little difficulty with your line. We'll check it out in a minute, and when we return, I'd like you to, what you're talking about, as they raise the accusations, there are some issues that I feel that we can ignore, but they're using them as justification to show that he doesn't like the government because his diplomatic passport was taken away and he's not attended any of the prayer sessions that this government has organized. Should that be a basis for rejecting what he has to say? And note also that what he has to say, looked in the other way, flipped, is a critique or an indictment on what the government is doing now, and feels those are the measures tangible enough to take to move us forward. We'll be right back after this break.
Our society.
Welcome back, and apologies for the, interferences. And there's a few of your comments here before I return to Koko to, finish up and continue really with his statement. This is from Lamisi in Kakasunanka in Tamale. Says, for the first time in a long while, President Rawlings spoke against the government and there was silence. Okay. Then Otabil with his comments, and quickly Omane Boama was up and doing as usual. What is good for the goose, he doesn't continue from there. Atai Moraine Wellensi says the president and his team will never accept anything but that which sounds sweet in their ears. The reality is that the ship is sinking. The earlier they face that which is real, the better. Otabil is a man of integrity and his views should be seen as such. And then Simon in Wale says, Dr. Mensah Otabil has hit the nail right on the head. People cannot be governed by propaganda. Nanayao Safo in London says, I think the president is so fortunate to have these influential people advising him. He should think outside the box and change his direction as a leader. John Mark says those in political power are not feeling the economic heat. Everything in the country has increased, including corruption, while salaries remain static. Ghanaians are waiting for 2016. Ibrahim Kopa in Tamale says, the comments of Dr. Mensah Otabil are just a microcosm of the general feeling of the social milieu. Hence, the government and its communicators should treat it with the greatest of respect rather than resorting to insults and unnecessary innuendos. Prosper Ofori in Shama says something. Part of the problem confronting our nation is what Pastor Duncan has identified as sabotaging governments. Edward in Nungwa says Pastor Mensah Otabil's charge on leadership to redirect focus is not just in order, but also timely. He's asking for a change of focus and not a change in leadership. So those chastising him should think again. If we remain silent in the wake of these unprecedented levels of mismanagement and corruption, you are quoting Jerry Rollins, then not only are we failing the voiceless in our society, but also charting a path which would be questioned by the children of tomorrow. Safo Yamusa in Kumbungu says, ex-President Rawlings' comments are even belated. The levels of corruption in the John Mahama-led NDC government have reached a crescendo. As for Dr. Otabil's comments, he has hit the nail right on the head. Pastor Otabil is even more charitable. The ordinary Ghanaians have completely lost confidence in the leadership of this country. Kukuso, you were making the point, and I asked the question about the fact that if you flip his comments, they are a direct indictment on what government is doing and feels that the best efforts.
Yeah, see, if we concede that, for instance, I'm just taking an example, a classic one. If we concede that we're going to the IMF at this time in order to achieve some or attain some policy credibility, we are suggesting that that is also meant to restore confidence of the business community, both locally and externally, in the state of the economy. If we go with this concession, why are we worried about a religious leader asking us to refocus, asking us to generate a new...
All right, Kuku, I apologize again, and this is quite terrible. There's obviously a need for a new technical leadership response, because this is bad. Let's see how it goes with you. He cannot be heard. Yes, he's making very important points, but he cannot be heard. Now, you see, you also spoke about the other aspect, looking at it with an open mind.
Yeah.
But if you put yourself in the shoes of people in leadership, how would you see it?
Well, it depends, because it doesn't follow that if you're in leadership, then you will always have to view some comments from a negative perspective. But
no, but when you have taken decisions which you feel are your best efforts, and you are being told
yeah,
that's not it. You need to redirect focus.
The point is, you know, I earlier on made a point. You are looking at the immediate or the short-term situation, the medium-term situation, and then the long-term situation. As we speak, I believe that ordinary persons, although aware the government has implemented and is implementing certain measures, are nonetheless still feeling some of the harshness of the economy. Now, they would want to know in the immediate or short-term situation what measures are being addressed that directly address their situation. Now, the moment they don't find that, they will express that feeling. And if you are in leadership, you don't have to deny that fact. You don't have to deny that fact. Of course, we will need to inspire people to be hopeful that things will get improved. So the point is, in leadership, you need to give hope. even when things are difficult. And in giving that hope, we don't need to treat adverse comment with hostility. Because the moment you do that, then the people begin to think that you are not respecting the pains that they are going through. So if you ask me, what should be government's response?
No, but the leadership feels you are putting spokes in their wheels, and that doesn't help. You're being pessimistic, and they continue to preach. Can we stop being pessimistic for a while? Can we be positive and, you know, pull together in the crisis?
It is perfectly right for people in leadership to do so. But I think it is wrong to lose your patience even as the people continue to demand. Because for them, they'll keep saying, you have come to me and have asked me to give you power to do A and to do B. I am not getting it, so I am demanding. We can concede that as legitimate for people to demand. So we need not lose our temper, and we need not lose our patience.
Okay. What do you say, sir, this texter who says that what is missing is confidence? The president can change that by appointing experienced Ghanaians into his cabinet. Rawlings had Nathan Kwao, Dr. Mwakunyama, Dr. Obeda Samoa, Dr. Boche, name them. Even Dr. Chambers and Martin Amidu never made it to full minister, you know, status. The president needs experienced doers, not talkers.
Well, maybe perhaps we have short memories. I mean, immediately after the 96 elections, after 2000, I think the economy was virtually in the same situation that we are in now. And I remember in those days, immediately after the elections, if you went to the market, prices were equally rising. And then the market women would tell you, these are free and fair prices. I mean, reference to the description of the elections as being free and fair. All these individuals were there.
Yes, but the issue is that confidence, that's what the people need.
We need to wind back and to gauge what confidence level existed then and compare that to now to be able to make those conclusions. It is because those times are no more being felt with us. So we think that it was that better. But the point is, from 93 to date, the economy behaves independent of what politicians and other people will say. Because there are certain fundamentals that it needs to operate in a particular way. And I think Nanado is right when he described it as a Goggins-Bed economy. But the point is, how are we able to get out of that economy? Over the years, we have not been able to get ourselves out of it. And it is not the fault or the failure of any particular government. It's been the inability of previous governments, including the current government, to get the economy out to the stage where these things may not have the kind of effect that they're having now. So I think that we need to be open, we need to be frank, in discussing the issues that affect the economy. Otherwise, NDC will come and go, MPP will come and go, we'll still be dealing with these things. By 2008, we virtually had a similar situation that we're talking about now. We're talking about the same situation that we're talking about now. The cedi has always fallen up to some point, and governments have always struggled to deal with the situation. And I recall, in the heat of the debate about the sale of Ghana Telecom to Vodafone, an eminent economist had to make the point that the sale was necessary in order to support the cedi. So it means that for the economy, and I think that is what Mensah Otabil had when he said that the cedi has its own mind, because it operates in response to factors that operate regardless of what politicians and others may be saying. So,
but you see, the people you are talking to also understand the politics of the reckless manner in which our politicians have sought to throw away money in election periods. And people trace this particular problem to the 2012 election, that there was just too much money out there just to win power.
It may be true, but that
so that we have had an unprecedented level of a deficit.
That may be true, but the problem cannot totally be based on that. if you have been following proceedings at this, the Judgment Death Commission,
right,
just look at how much money that the sole commissioner has adjudged to have been paid unlawfully. Put those sums together, and you'll be amazed how much money the nation has lost. But the question is, following the proceedings, has any minister been mentioned? Has any president been mentioned? Has any high political appointee been mentioned? Most of those persons responsible for that have been the bureaucrats and the technocrats. So while we look at what the politicians have done and are failing to do, we also need to cast the net wider to look at other agents of the problem.
Okay. Now, briefly, just a minute or two, tell me. There are those who also feel that Dr. Otabil doesn't have the technical competence to speak to the matter that he spoke to.
I am speaking, what technical competence do I have on some of the issues?
Matters of finance.
It is a question of opinion. Whether technical or non-technical, you are feeling a certain situation. You have perspectives on what you think the situation is or ought to be. And I think that we cannot allow experts alone to speak. After all, it is the experts who have produced the kind of situations that we are facing now. So I don't think that there is such a force in the argument that we should only allow experts in finance to talk to these matters.
Thank you very much. Well, some will also say that is a man who is at the front of a lot of corporate things happening in the country. So you cannot expect him to be ignorant of some of these situations. Your views and comments are so welcome. 1422, that's the text line, and you can post them on our Facebook wall. We will share them with the rest of the world. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show, brought to you by the kind sponsorship of MTN Everywhere You Go, Bank of Africa, strong as a group, and close as a partner. Errata Motors, that is where you're going to get the best vehicles for the cheapest prices. And of course, I am, my outfit is provided by Latida. Now, Yao Osei Frimpong says something in Africa, cowardice is deemed as humility, where boldness and foresight is classed as arrogance. That's why we are where we are. Good morning. Thank you also. This one from Abdulaziz says, is Godwin speaking for NDC or MPP? Why has Dr. Omane not been invited? Please get serious. And I'm saying to that text, get serious. This one says, oh, you continue that not until the panel is, okay, you won't get out of this fixation, which is baseless, really. This one says, Joseph Apia Bedu says, no wonder things are not improving in the country because government and its communicators are not ready to heed the advice from accomplished persons in the country. Ask yourself why. Indecisive government at work. Nanaya Nani Yao says, give Mahama the best economy in the world and he will still take you to HEPIC. And please stop attacking Otabil, for he feels what is good for the people. Ilyasu in Tamale, Ilyasu Haruna says that the NDC sees everything wrong with views expressed contrary. The same NDC that applauded Duncan Williams for praying for the president and the CD has problems with Mensah Otabil for speaking to the current state of affairs. Arime Kwanzaa says, what Dr. Mensah Otabil said has been said by many Ghanaians. The only difference is Otabil is a public figure. Okay, so those are comments that are really coming in. Rolna Diaboa says something, I think I really enjoyed the, okay, we'll get to that, the vetting of Spio Gabra. We'll get to that quite soon. And I'll take a last comment by Coralie Clarence. Says, it's so sad to say that leaders hate to be told the bitter truth. They come into office and make all the monies they want, either legally or illegally, take ex-gratia awards, 7 Pejaros, and later scream aloud that they are forming foundations to support. Well, so let's hear Kweku on this issue, and then we'll dovetail it into the youth Enterprise Support Fund, 10 million Ghana cedis. Let's hear you on this because we have not been able to hear you clearly because of the lack of technical leadership response.
Yes, we need a new direction.
Okay, go on. Right.
Yeah, just to summarize, to be honest with you, I really don't see much basis for the Olabalo.
Right, you've said that.
Yes, I think that government and leaders, the managers of the economy and all the rest should take on board what Dr. Otabil has said. You see, why I think he's making a solid point is this. Here we are as a nation. We have told the whole world that we're going to the IMF because we need policy credibility and also to restore confidence of the business community locally and externally in the economy. Not too long ago, after a long, dragging of feet, we've had to revise the Chinese loan that we are going for. We've had to revise it, If you remember the forest that we've done.
Right.
All those things put together show a certain level of, inconsistency. All this is coming from leadership, in not just the political, but also in the economic field. So if you hear a voice asking for a new leadership response, it's apt. It's a reflection of the situation in which we find ourselves. And I would rather advise the leaders of this country, political, economic, and social, to take on board what Reverend Otabil is saying. To refuse it is a sign of weakness, and indeed, to some extent, arrogance. To think that, well, you are the only one who knows, and that you don't want advice from certain quarters. It's unfortunate that Reverend Otabil has been politically tagged, and this, I think, must stop. Okay, because that is why it's making some people in government especially, impervious to the logic and the wisdom that accompany what he's saying. Otherwise, really, this is not a big deal. Mr. Rawlings, you see, I'm going to try very hard to separate the message from the messenger. He's a politician, let's not forget. He was a former head of state for almost 19 years. He's the founder of the ruling party, that is the NDC, and he's been around for quite a long time. He's had one characteristic. I do not recall, the last time I checked, any Ghanaian head of state or president who has not suffered in the hands of Rawlings in terms of criticism and exposure. I do not recall, except perhaps himself. And that is what makes it difficult sometimes to, absorb what he says, even if it has some substance. There may be extreme levels of what he's saying, unprecedented corruption, untouchables. These things don't come with any specific evidence and things. So that's another part of the problem. I'm so cautious swallowing Rawlings' critique because he's done it over and over again without providing anything of evidential value, and always to the extent of purging himself of any of those things. And that's what I have a problem with.
Yeah, and then some say you will forever have a problem with him because that's it. You are anti-Rawlings, really.
I'm not exactly anti-Rawlings. I detest his politics. But he is a nice person, socialist, very nice person. I'm told recently he even told Kofi Adams to ensure that I got a ticket to go to Mecca. Those tickets that were sent to him, protocol, location, and for him to have thought of me in that sense, that's a nice person. I do not hate Rawlings. I just detest his politics, and there's a good reason for that. But he's been part of us, our history. He's ruled this country for 19 years. He's cultivated or generated some experience that obviously can inform how we move forward as a nation. As we are all growing, everybody's becoming a little bit more moderate and liberal in how we look at some of these things. So yes, there's some truth in what he's saying when he talks about some opulence on the part of people in government and the kind of lifestyles they are living, some level of corruption. I mean, these are hard facts, okay? Whether he is the one to articulate them is a matter of debate, and I usually am hesitant in endorsing things he says. because of his own track record. You understand? Okay. Let's be honest. Let me be clear. How did he deal with issues of corruption, some of which were unprecedented under him? How did he deal with issues of opulence under him when he had the chance?
That doesn't mean that he should not be able to speak to those issues.
But when he does, he should know that obviously, inevitably, people will raise the issues and raise it because of his peculiar situation.
I see. Very interesting there. And, you know, after Dr. Otabil has spoken, the very first reaction that came was a reaction that was given by Dr. Omane Boamah, the Minister of Communications, and he, you may have heard now, said that he didn't want to touch God's anointed, you know, because of that biblical injunction. But I'm just reading a portion of what he had to say, and captured by my Joy Online. Expressing displeasure, government's communications, I think, Minister, accused Otabil of trying to paint a non-existing picture, discerning the preacher man's message. Omane Boamah said he saw, quote, a certain push, which, if we are not careful, may create the kind of situation he is trying to paint. The communication minister said government was not in denial about the problematic state of the economy, which I have already acknowledged, but dread and gloomy pictures are a stretch from reality, he noted. And he said, quote, if you have an economy growing at 6%, it is very difficult to paint the picture he's painting. He underscored. Well, James Agaga has also said this. He emphasized some steps government was taking to respond to the record fall of the Ghana cedi, including going to IMF to assist in restoring the kind of confidence. Okay, we have spoken to all of these things. There's Lloyd Amwa, who is, we are told his description, I can't immediately remember, is it a sort of a China-oriented, you know, economic analyst. He has reacted and said Dr. Omane Boamah's reaction is childish and that it was unnecessary. He's running away from what is really reality.